It's been more than 34 years now, and the noise of the incident at Paterson Lafayette Grill still hasn't gone down. Did Rubin Carter and John Artis kill those people and brutally injure one more on a night in June 1966? Or was Carter, the boxer, and Artis, the former high school tracker, unjustly imprisoned for almost 2 decades? Well, let's find out in this video. Stay tuned. Carter was born in Clifton, New Jersey back in 1937. He was the 4th child of 7 kids in the family. Life at home wasn't easy, especially with his dad being strict. When he was just 11, he ended up in some serious trouble. He got sent off to juvie for stabbing a guy who he said tried to assault him. Everything didn't end there. In 1954, he ran for the juvie and joined the army. After basic training in South Carolina, they shipped him off to Germany. Over there, he got into boxing through the army. However, things didn't go smoothly for him. He ended up getting discharged in 1956 because he kept getting into trouble, 4 courts-martial to be exact. Once he was out, he returned to New Jersey, but trouble seemed to follow him. He got busted for 2 muggings and ended up behind bars. So, once Carter got out of prison in 1961, he jumped into the boxing scene. Standing at 5 feet 8 inches, he was a bit shorter than most middleweights, but that didn't stop him. He fought his whole career in the 155 to 160 pound range. People loved his aggressive style and knockout punches, earning him the cool nickname Hurricane. He made a name for himself by taking down severe contenders like Florentino Fernandez, Holly Mims, Gomeo Brennan, and George Benton. By July '63, the ring had him in its top 10 middleweight contenders list. By the end of 1965, he was ranked 5th. In 1963, he fought 6 times, winning 4 and losing 2. Then in December, he beat Emil Griffith, a past and future world champ, knocking him down twice in the first round for a knockout win. That pushed him to number 3 for Joey Giardello's world middleweight title. He had a couple more wins, including one against future heavyweight champ Jimmy Ellis in 1964, but then faced Giardello in a big match in Philly. He landed some solid hits early on, but Giardello took charge and won after 15 rounds. After that, his luck ended. 1965 saw him win 5 fights but lose 3 out of 4 against tough contenders like Luis Manuel Rodriguez, Dick Tiger, and Harry Scott. Tiger gave him a real beating, knocking him down 3 times in their match. Carter even said it was the worst beating he'd ever taken. He wrapped up his boxing career with 27 wins, including 19 knockouts, 12 losses, and 1 draw out of 40 fights. The World Boxing Council gave him an honorary championship belt in 1993, and he got his spot in the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame. Then on the 17th of June 1966, at exactly 2 a.m. at Lafayette Bar and Grill in Paterson, New Jersey, an unfortunate event happened that would change Carter's life. 2 men entered the bar and started shooting randomly. Almost immediately, the bartender and a customer were killed by a gunshot. Then, another man called Hazel Tanis gave up the ghost a month later due to the multiple injuries he suffered from the gunshots. The 3rd customer, Willie Marins, managed to survive an attack even though he suffered a head wound that left him blind in one eye. When the police questioned Willie and another person, they mentioned that the shooters were black males. However, neither of them identified Carter or John Artis specifically. So just 10 minutes after the murders happened, around 2:40 a.m., Carter and Artis were stopped by the police in a rental car. They returned from a night out at the Night Spot, a nearby bar. Carter was in the backseat, Artis was driving, and another guy named John Royster was in the passenger seat. Interestingly, the police officers recognized Carter because he was a well-known and controversial local figure, so they let him go. But then a few minutes later, those same officers asked Patty Valentine and Alfred Bello, eyewitnesses outside the bar, to describe the getaway car. During the trial, Bello testified that as he was approaching Lafayette, 2 black males showed up, one with a shotgun and the other with a pistol. He got scared and ran away from them. They then hopped into a white car that was double parked near Lafayette. He said he was watching out for his accomplice Arthur Bradley, who broke into a warehouse nearby. He later entered the bar to get cigarettes and found dead bodies in the bar. He grabbed this opportunity and stole money from the bar, but unfortunately got captured by the police. A lady named Valentine, who lived above the bar, testified to seeing 2 black guys leave the building and get into a white car, just like Bello reported. They said it was white with a butterfly design at the back of the car and New York State license plates with a blue background and orange lettering. Valentine initially said the car had rear lights that lit up like butterflies. But at the retrial in 1976, she changed her story and described Carter's car accurately. It had regular taillights with butterfly-shaped aluminum decorations. Bello's description also matched this. The prosecution suggested that the confusion happened because the defense misread a court transcript. After dropping off Royster, Carter and Artis were stopped again at 3 a.m. in order to follow the police to the station where they were arrested. The descriptions given by Valentine and Bello, the physical characteristics of the attackers provided by the survivors, the lack of forensic evidence, and the timeline provided by the police were all factors that led to the conviction being overturned in 1985. Forensic experts later determined that the victims were shot with a .32 caliber pistol and a 12-gauge shotgun, but the weapons were never found. There was no forensic evidence linking Carter or Artis to the murders. The lead detective claimed he didn't have enough time to bring in an expert for gun residue tests, but he did arrange for lie detector tests, which they passed. However, in 1976, a second report was discovered claiming they failed. After a long 17 hours of interrogation, they were finally released. Then Carter and Artis even went before a grand jury voluntarily, and after all the stress, the jury found no case to answer. Several months later, Bello suddenly changed his story. He did this because the police found out that he was in the area for stealing from the cash register. And because of this, he positively identified Artis as one of the attackers, while Bradley now came forward claiming Carter was the other. Based on their claims, the police arrested and charged them, and the insane part is that the rental car that Carter and Artis were driving got seized when they were arrested, and the police kept it. 5 days after their release, a detective searched the car again and found something shocking. They found 2 unfired rounds. One was a .32 caliber and the other was a 12-gauge. But neither of these rounds matched the ones found with the victims. The .32 round was brass instead of copper, and the shotgun shell was an older model with a different wad and color. The situation was a bit fishy. When the day of the trial arrived, things got interesting. The prosecutor had to address some significant differences in the evidence, and they came up with a second report that was supposedly filed about 75 minutes after the murders took place. This new report recorded the 2 rounds of events. The prosecutor had to bring up this second report because they couldn't explain why the police released the men even though they had this evidence. And it turns out the police still need to follow the standard procedure of bagging and tagging the evidence. That's something worth pondering. Later on, the defense, led by Raymond A. Brown, focused on uncovering the flaws in the eyewitness testimonies of Marins and Bello. They found inconsistencies in their stories. They even brought in witnesses who confirmed that Carter and Artis were still at the night spot when the shootings happened. Eventually, both Carter and Artis were convicted of first-degree murder by an all-white jury. But thankfully, the jury recommended mercy, so they weren't sentenced to death. Instead, Judge Samuel Larner handed down 1 concurrent and 2 consecutive life sentences for Carter and 3 concurrent sentences for Artis. So, when they were in court, one of Carter's friends spoke up and claimed that the Passaic County prosecutors tried to pressure her into testifying against Carter. But the prosecutors denied ever doing such a thing. It was a he said and she said situation. After about 9 long hours of deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict, and unfortunately they found both Carter and Artis guilty once again. Judge Leopizzi then handed down the same sentences for both of them. Carter received a double life sentence, while Artis got a single life sentence. In 1974, Bello and Bradley took back what they said about Carter and Alice. Their recantations were used as the basis for a motion for a new trial. But Judge Samuel Larner was all like, it doesn't sound faithful to him that he wouldn't have it, but it didn't end there. George Lewis, a big man in the advertising industry, stepped in and started a campaign to support Carter, and it gained a lot of public support for a retrial or pardon. Even boxing legend Muhammad Ali joined in and publicly wished Carter good luck on his appeal. Bob Dylan co-wrote and performed a song called Hurricane in 1975, declaring Carter's innocence. Then, on December 7, 1975, Dylan performed the song at a concert in Trenton State Prison where Carter was temporarily staying. During the whole hearing on the recantations, the defense lawyers argued that Bello and Bradley lied during the trial. They told the jurors they only made these specific deals with the prosecutors for their trial testimony. The defense played this detective tape from 1966 during the recantation hearing, revealing that the promises go way beyond what Bello testified to. Judge Larner denied this argument too, but the New Jersey Supreme Court stepped in, and guess what they said? They agreed that the prosecution should have disclosed all these deals between them and witnesses Bello and Bradley before or during the 1967 trial. They believed it could have seriously affected the jury's evaluation of the eyewitnesses' credibility. Justice Mark Sullivan even said the defendant's right to a fair trial was prejudiced. As a result, the court threw out the original convictions and granted Carter and Artis a new trial. Despite facing challenges due to the passage of 10 years since the case, prosecutor Burl Ives Humphreys decided to retry Carter and Artis. His primary concern was avoiding false testimony to secure a conviction. Humphreys arranged for Bello to undergo polygraph tests administered by Leonard H. Harrelson and Richard Arthur, both esteemed experts. Surprisingly, both experts concluded that Bello was telling the truth regarding seeing Carter outside the Lafayette Grill after the murders. However, there was a dent in the story. Harrelson verbally mentioned that Bello had been inside the bar at the time of the shooting, contradicting Bello's testimony from the 1967 trial. Interestingly, Harrelson reaffirmed that Bello's previous testimony was truthful in his subsequent written report. Moving to the new trial in 1976, Bello repeated his original testimony, identifying Carter and Artis as the armed men outside the Lafayette Grill. Bradley, another witness, chose not to assist either side. The defense responded by presenting multiple witnesses who claimed Carter was elsewhere during the time of the murders. Investigator Fred Hogan, responsible for the changes in Bello and Bradley's testimonies, testified for the defense. He was questioned about possible bribes, which he denied, and his original notes on the conversations were submitted as evidence. The defense highlighted Patricia Valentine's inconsistent testimony and revisited the 1967 testimony of William Marins, who described shooters very different in appearance from Artis and Carter. Artis got out on parole in 1981, but Carter's lawyers kept on fighting. By 1982, the New Jersey Supreme Court said the conviction still stood, voting 4-3. Some of the judges thought the prosecutor should have told the defense about Harrelson's thoughts on where Bello was during the murders, but most said it wasn't a big deal. Then Carolyn Kelly, a bail bondswoman, claimed she raised money in 1975 to 1976 for Carter's second trial, which got him out on bail in March 1976. But things got messy when she said the boxer roughed her up over a hotel bill during a fundraising trip the next month. Newspapers splashed it on the front page, and Carter's support took a nosedive, though he denied it. Kelly didn't want to press charges, saying Carter needed help, not jail. A judge held hearings and changed Carter's bail terms after confirming the assault. Also, Carter's marriage to May Thelma Baskett tanked after she found out he'd been cheating after their second kid was born in 1963. So, in 1985, Carter's legal team went to federal court asking for a writ of habeas corpus. Judge H. Lee Sarakin from the District of New Jersey took a look and said the whole case was more about stirring up racism than facts and decided to cancel the convictions. That got Carter, who was 48 then, out of jail in 1985 with no bail needed. The prosecutors weren't happy though. They went to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals asking to send Carter back to prison while they appealed Sarakin's decision. But the court said no and eventually agreed with Sarakin's take on the evidence without discussing other reasons. The prosecutors decided to try appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court shrugged it and said it wasn't their business. So they could have given Carter and Artis a third trial, but the prosecutors decided to dismiss the previous accusations. They asked to drop the original charges, saying it wasn't legally doable after almost 22 years and with key witnesses no longer reliable. New Jersey Attorney General W. Carey Edwards mentioned it wasn't practical to retry anyone. The Passaic County prosecutor John P. Gosseljak joined in, saying they couldn't bring back the racially motivated crime angle due to the federal court's decisions. A judge agreed, and that was the end of the legal back and forth. After his release, Carter settled in Toronto, Canada, and became a Canadian citizen. From 1993 to 2005, he ran the show as the big boss at the Association in Defense of the Wrongly Convicted. But things got messy when the AIDWIC didn't back him up in his protest against Susan McLean's appointment as a judge. She was the prosecutor in a case where a Canadian guy, Paul Morin, spent over 18 years in the slammer until DNA evidence cleared him. Carter's love life had its ups and downs too. He married again, this time to Lisa Peters, but they separated later. In 1996, when Carter was 59, Toronto's police thought he was a drug-dealing suspect in his 30s. They arrested him but released him when they learned he was the wrong guy. Despite the whole roller coaster of events, Carter didn't slow down. He changed careers and became a motivational speaker. Then, in October 2005, he bagged 2 honorary doctorates of law. York University in Toronto and Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia, gave him these honors to recognize his work with AIDWIC and the Innocence Project. In 1996, Carter gathered up the Abolition Award from Death Penalty Focus. Back in March 2012, at this big justice conference down in Western Australia, Carter dropped something big. he revealed he was battling terminal prostate cancer. The doctor said he probably had just 3 to 6 months left. After that, his old friend John Artis stepped in. He moved in with Carter and took care of him. Fast forward to April 20th, 2014, when Carter, age 76, passed away because of the illness. He was cremated and his ashes got spread out partly over Cape Cod and partly at a horse farm in Kentucky. But even in those last months, Carter was fighting for justice. He was on a mission to clear David McCallum, this guy from Brooklyn who'd been locked up since 1985 for murder. Just 2 months before he passed, Carter wrote this piece in the New York Daily News calling for a full review of McCallum's case. He wanted the Brooklyn district attorney to look into it, believing McCallum's conviction was as flawed as his own, saying it was all about racism and hiding the truth. Surprisingly, Carter's wish came true. On October 15, 2014, McCallum was exonerated. Racism is a serious issue that unfortunately still exists today. About Robin Carter's story, it's essential to recognize that racism can significantly impact individuals and communities. It's about treating people unfairly or differently based on their race or ethnicity. Robin Carter's story might shed light on the experiences of racism and the need for equality and justice. It's crucial to stand against racism and promote understanding. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you found this content valuable. We'll see you in the next one.